during the period of conservatorship.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Time of the gentleman has expired. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Pittenger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hello, Mr. Lew. Good to see you. Mr. Lew, Secretary Lew, did the Office of Terrorism Financial Intelligence, did that office raise any concerns about the method of payment to Iran? The hundreds of millions of dollars in cash to a State Department designated sponsor of terrorism. Did they raise any concerns?
Congressman, I'm obviously not going to get into any individual things that
they're under your purview. I just asked you a direct question. Did they raise any concerns?
I would say that the view within the Treasury Department is that everything that we did was consistent with both good policy and
so they didn't raise any
concerns.
concerns.
I'm really not going to comment on one way or the other what I did or didn't hear from intelligence briefers.
Well, this is your Office of Terrorism Financial Intelligence in Treasury.
Yeah. I mean, we have consistently seen analysis and shared analysis that
Were you apprised of any concerns by that office?
Congressman, I was not briefed internally on reasons not to proceed with this transaction, but I'm not going to describe who told me what.
Did that office conduct any analysis as to the impact of sending ultimately billions of dollars over to Iran?
Congressman, we've done extensive analysis on what Iran is doing outside of the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, and we have tried as best we can, and we have some ability to see what's going on.
How many
see what the
banks
support
operate,
is.
Mr. Secretary, excuse me, but we have limited time.
Yeah, but
how many banks operate
question,
under the SWIFT authority that gives them access to the international financial system? How many banks in Iran have that capacity?
I would have to get back to you, Congressman.
That'd be an important thing to know.
But if I could just go back, it really is important to answer your last question. We have been looking to see if, as we said at the time the JCPOA was agreed to, that there would not be a substantial increase in funding, and we are not seeing the increase in funds available to Iran going to the purposes that we all want to stop. If we see it, we will stop it. If we see ships going, we will try to stop them.
Well, the money going through the financial system, through the SWIFT Bank Authority, has enormous impact. Mr. Secretary, Pastor Saeed Abedini, he was one of the hostages. I went over and greeted him in Germany when he arrived. As he was waiting in Iran to depart on the Swiss airline, Swiss-provided aircraft, to go to Germany, he asked one of the guards, why the wait? Why can't we board and leave? And Pastor Abedini testified in Congress and also in the media that they were waiting for a plane to arrive. And once that plane arrived, then they would be able to depart. And of course, we've seen pictures of planes that arrived and bags coming off. So did it ever really concern to you that the reality of paying for these hostages, these ransoms, was not just perception, but in reality, that's what the Iranians believed?
Congressman, I can't speak to what anyone else believed, but I can tell you what I understood at the time and what I know now. We had 3 separate negotiations, all of which were going on because a window had been opened at the same time. We didn't talk to Iran for decades. But with the negotiation of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, we had the ability to negotiate for the release of Americans being held against their will. We had the ability to settle an outstanding legal claim. The fact that all those things came together is because we were talking to each other.
When you see that the 3 hostages were released. In fact,
I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry.
it became very offensive to Pastor Abedini. He said, what's going to happen now is we've exacerbated the problem, and we're going to see a dollar amount put on every hostage.
But, Congressman, there's a fundamental difference between ransom, which is when you give your money to another party, than having separate transactions where you give a party its own money. And that's all this was.
One last question I'd like to ask you, 20 seconds. Mr. Secretary, have we ever paid cash in large sums to any other government before?
I mean, I'd have to go back and check the history. I mean, we do a lot of business in a lot of ways. And I know your time is almost up, Congressman. I know this has been a very difficult week in your city, and I just want to express my own personal sympathies to the families that have been injured and suffered a loss, and
Thank you.
to the
We
city.
need the leadership of Martin Luther King in my city today.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Time of the